I used to believe betrayal walked in on tiptoes. Quiet, careful, considerate enough to leave you a breadcrumb trail so you could discover it gently, like easing into a cold pool. Mine didn't. Mine kicked down the door, tracked mud across the carpet, and laughed in my face on the way back out. My name is Daniel. I'm 34. I live in Austin, Texas. I work as a systems engineer for a mid-sized clean tech company that makes grid-scale battery inverters. My job is the kind of quiet, nerdy labor nobody cheers for until the lights don't go out during a heat wave. I'm good at it. I like being good at something that actually matters. 2 years ago, I thought I'd never date again. I'd been married to Lily. Smart, funny, astrophotography-obsessed Lily, until a drunk driver took a red light too personally and cut her life in half on a Wednesday night in June. I remember the sterile hum of the ER and a clock that wouldn't shut up. People talk about grief like a storm, but storms end. This didn't. It just changed temperatures. I slowly learned how to keep things living. My houseplants, the sourdough starter, even a cat that wandered in and never left. And then, one day at a sustainability mixer I barely had the energy to attend, I met Maya. Maya was a project manager on the software side of the company. Brisk, razor funny, always in motion like a hummingbird that charged overtime. She was big on hiking and bigger on color-coded calendars. She made my depression feel less like a room with no windows and more like nightfall on a porch, still dark but with air and space and the possibility of morning. We started as late-night Slack threads, then long coffees at Houndstooth, and then that first awkward grocery run where you realize someone puts cilantro in everything and you don't. I learned she hated olives, slept with a fan on even in winter, and collected enamel pins like a magpie with a credit score. She learned I kept a drawer of cables organized by labeled Ziplocs, and that my cat, Newton, was the true landlord of the apartment. The first red flag didn't look red at all. It looked like ambition. We were in a sprint review when she introduced Brandon, our new strategic partnerships guy. Brandon was one of those men who always look like the protagonist of whatever room they enter. Too white of a smile, too firm of a handshake. Navy blazer at 2 p.m. on a 90-degree Austin day. He had a Stanford ring and a way of pausing like he was letting the soundtrack find him. Brandon's here to help us navigate utility RFPs, Maya said. He's got history with West Rock Energy. History turned out to be golf trips, framed photos with SVPs, and a laminated lanyard of old conference badges he somehow managed to make visible in every meeting. He started dropping in on our stand-ups, making comments in our Jira tickets, and always messaging Maya directly afterward to clarify. At first, I shrugged. She was a PM. Crossy-functional meant her calendar looked like Tetris. But a few weeks later, I noticed tiny seams where the fabric didn't match. One night, she slept over after we cooked flank steak and watched a docuseries about water rights. Her phone buzzed 3 times around 11:05 p.m. Different contacts, same preview. Got the contract language? Need the spreadsheet. Ping me when you see this. I felt silly saying anything, because we weren't teenagers, careers bleed. But then I caught Brandon's name on the 4th buzz and saw a thumb stoop emoji from Maya before she flipped the phone over. "You on call tonight?" I asked. "Sort of," she said. "Partnerships want references for the West Rock bid. Just logistics. Go to sleep, Dan." I went to sleep. Or tried. The second red flag wasn't red. It was fluorescent, the kind you'd wear on a highway. Our company scheduled a 2-day offsite in Dallas, a strategy summit. Corporate code for PowerPoints with buffet sliders. I wasn't planning to go, but Maya said she'd be there and wanted to tack on a Sunday at the Dallas Arboretum. It sounded normal and sweet in the way that makes you forget how many coffee pods you've used to survive this quarter. I said yes. The hotel was glass and chrome pretending to be important. The lobby smelled like lemongrass and money. I checked in, went to the ballroom to pick up my badge, and saw them across the room. Maya and Brandon, heads close, laughing at something on his phone. It wasn't an intimate laugh. It was a conspiratorial one. And maybe conspiracies at work are just work. But his hand hovered on her back an inch too long, and the room changed shape. That night, she texted me at 10:42 p.m., running late in prep. See you in the morning, I said. Yep, fi, because what else do you say when your chest is a drawer that won't close? I didn't do anything heroic like knock on her door or demand explanations. I went for a walk. There was an empty conference room on the second floor with the lights off. I could see the skyline, the hotel pool, a reflection of myself holding a plastic cup of water like a talisman. I stayed long enough for the janitor to ask me if I was lost. I said I was fine. He said, people who say they're fine at 1 a.m. in an empty ballroom usually aren't. Then he kept moving, like a prophet with a mop. The third red flag was not a flag, it was a memo. A month later, rumors churned that our CEO, Jonas, wanted a transformational partnership to goose the next quarterly call. Whispered names floated: WestRock, Suncor, even an oil major pretending to be green. Then an all-hands invite appeared with the kind of bland title that makes your stomach drop: Key Strategic Update. Jonas took the stage in his uniform, white shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to the exact same height. We're in conversations, he said, the kind that separate companies that make a dent from companies that become the dent. He smiled, genteel shark. Our liaison on this is Brandon Avery, with project management by Maya Collins. Applause. Because that's how corporate rooms survive their own air. Afterward, he shook hands through the crowd and came right to me. Daniel, he said, we need you shaping technical risk for the integration track. You're the grown-up in the room on inverter controls. Happy to help, I said, like a man who is about to sleep next to a smoke alarm. That night, at my place, Maya tried to celebrate. Wine, Thai takeout, jokes about how Brandon would probably ask her to schedule time to breathe. Can I ask a question and not be a jealous idiot? I said. She set the wine down. Sure. What's going on with you and Brandon? A laugh. Nothing is going on with me and Brandon. You're always with him. At work, after work. He texts late. He looks at you like he owns the space between you. That's just how he is, she said, rolling her eyes. He's clingy with everyone. It's politics. He wants to win. We all do. Don't make it weird. Okay, and if there were something, you'd tell me? I'd tell you, she said, quick and sharp, like I'd insulted the house. Then softer, Dan, I know what you've been through. I wouldn't do that to you. The truth is, that should have reassured me. Instead, it made me notice the distance between what people say and what they can bear to say. A week later, I learned what betrayal looks like when it buys a better suit. Our utility lab sits in a low building near the river, all caged transformers and yellow warning tape. I was finishing a test on a PWN filter when my buddy Omar poked his head in. You going to happy hour? He asked. What happy hour? Brandon's thing, closing dinner for WestRock, then drinks at the line. Maya invited half the project list. You didn't get it? I checked my phone. Nothing. Maybe it got buried, I said. I'm not proud of how my voice sounded. Want to roll with me? Omar offered. You've earned a free mezcal. Rain check, I said. I need to wrap this test. I didn't need to wrap anything. I did need to know why I hadn't been invited. I told myself it was a seating limit, a calendar glitch, anything but what it felt like. Around 9:30 p.m., I did something I'm not proud of either. I opened Maya's iPad, which she'd left at my place to charge. We synced Apple IDs for Find My Mutual Safety thing, we said. I didn't guess her passcode. I used Face ID while she was asleep once, months ago, because she'd asked me to download an app and then fell asleep mid-sentence, and I can justify it 6 ways, but it's still a door I chose to unlock. Her messages were a parade work threads, a group chat named PowerPoint PTSD, a family thread with her sister, and then one called B+M. It wasn't a heart or a flame, just 2 letters, B and M. I opened it. It started 9 weeks back, like a fuse you don't notice until it reaches the dynamite. At first, it was pure work. We need to move, section 2.3 to the addendum. And then, haha, did you see Jonas's shoes? And then, drinks after the pre-brief? Then it shifted. A selfie from Maya in the hotel elevator, something about armor up, and Brandon replying, "You're lethal when you're nervous." A photo of his jacket on a chair with claiming space. The first time I saw the word hour in a context that had nothing to do with project schedules, my body went, our win, our night, our secret. I scrolled because there's no way to climb out except to know how deep the hole is. Words got worse. They saw themselves as the underdog duo beating the stodgy engineers. Me, implicitly, the calcified execs, the world. Complaints about me were small, stupid things. Dan's too cautious. Dan kills momentum. There were photos that were not explicit and still managed to be obscene because of what they implied. His hand on her knee under a table, her shoe on his lap in a rideshare, a blurred shot of ceiling tiles with, oops. Then a video. I didn't click it. I didn't need to. The thumbnail was a hotel headboard and a wrist with her enamel pin bracelet. I closed the app like it could bite me. Newton jumped on the couch and looked at me like I'd committed an unforgivable sin, like feeding him late. I sat there breathing strange, shallow breaths, like my lungs were trying to tiptoe out of my chest. When Maya came back around midnight, I had done the stupidest possible thing, nothing. I didn't ambush. I didn't throw the iPad. I didn't scream. I looked at her face, flushed from alcohol and victory and him, and said, "How was it?" "We nailed it," she said, smiling. "We're going to be in the earnings call. Brandon's convinced West Rock is a lock. You should have come." Was I invited? A pause. It was small. Last minute, I figured you had lab late. I nodded like someone's favorite bobblehead and went to brush my teeth so I could cry 5 feet away with the fan on. There are people who respond to betrayal with fire. I respond with spreadsheets. The next morning, I called in a favor with HR. Not a formal complaint yet, but I'm seeing alignment issues on the West Rock project. Can we review roles and comms patterns? Sam from People Analytics owed me for helping her husband fix a NAS issue at their house. We track access logs, calendar density, Slack DM volume, she said. What are you looking for? Correlations, I said carefully. Shifts in who's making decisions, off-channel communication. She sent me a heat map that afternoon. It looked exactly like I feared. Everything bottlenecked through 2 people. Brandon and Maya after 7 p.m. when the rest of us stopped pretending we lived at work. Then I did something wise. I called my lawyer, Rhea. She's the kind of attorney who asks better questions than you want to answer. I told her I had reason to believe 2 colleagues were engaged in a relationship that influenced vendor selection and suppressed dissenting technical review, including mine. Do not spy. Do not access devices that are not yours. Do not trap anyone, she said. If there's a conflict of interest that materially affects a public company's disclosures, there are lawful ways to surface it. SEC whistleblower rules exist for a reason. I wasn't planning to go rogue, I lied. We built a plan that felt like wearing a cup in a minefield. Document everything. Keep work on work channels. Escalate through governance. And if resistance looked retaliatory or fraudulent, go outside. Step 1 was innocent. Resurrect the risk register. I pulled together prior issues we'd flagged. Thermal runaway concerns at Texas. Ambient temperatures. Firmware latency with high-frequency switching. Brandon hated it. "You're the brake stand," he said in a meeting. "I need engines." "You need steering," I said, calm. "We've seen certain failure modes in the field. Westrock will too." He smiled without his eyes. "Love the passion." After the meeting, he cornered me by the coffee machine. "You know," he said, voice low, cologne like a subtle assault, "leadership notices who carries water and who spills it." "I don't spill," I said. "I label the buckets." He leaned closer. "Be a team player." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm documenting." That night, I received an email from Jonas's admin, "Leadership sync tomorrow, 8 a.m." They'd never invited me to one of those. The subject had risk. In it, my name was CC'd behind people with longer titles and stiffer jackets. I didn't sleep. The meeting was in Conference A, the one with the giant living wall. Jonas opened like a coach trying to decide which player to bench without getting sued. "We value healthy debate," he said, "but we also value momentum. Daniel, we're hearing you're blocking." "I'm doing my job," I said evenly. "Here are the risks we need to discuss before we sign a binding term sheet." I walked through the deck, testing gaps, adhesion issues in our conformal coating at high humidity, a bug in the MCU that only showed up after long idle times. I wasn't theatrical. I was careful. I had footnotes. Brandon coughed laughs. "We can't design for doomsday," he said. "Our competitors aren't slowing down." "Designing for reality isn't doomsday," I said. "It's engineering." Jonas rubbed his temples. "What would satisfy you?" "An independent technical review," I said. "Pull in an outside lab, and we need to disclose the risks accurately if we're going to put this on the earnings call. If not, we've got a different problem." The room got cold. Later that day, my badge stopped opening the lab door. Security said it was a system glitch. IT said they'd look into it. My manager texted, "We good?" with 3 question marks. Maya sent a single message on Slack. "Are you okay?" My hands shook over the keyboard. I typed, "Yep," and deleted it. Then I typed, "I'm not entering DMs with you on this project. Keep it on email. Send." That night, I dragged myself to bed and dreamt of Lily's camera on a tripod, pointed at a field of stars, each one blinking like a cursor. The next morning, Sam from People Analytics called. "You didn't get this from me," she said, "but Brandon asked for your doc permissions to be changed on the Westrock folder view only. He's also booking 101 with the execs. Be careful." I thanked her, hung up, and emailed Rhea. "Phase 2, I wrote. We filed an internal complaint, potential conflict of interest, and retaliatory access changes impeding risk disclosure. We requested a formal review by the audit committee. Rhea CC'd legal with language that made my spine relax for the first time in a week. She also quietly opened a channel with an external counsel and drafted an SEC tip, just in case. Corporate moved with the floaty urgency of a person jogging in flip-flops. HR acknowledged. Legal scheduled. Jonas sent me a tight-lipped, "Thanks for raising this, we take it seriously." Maya came to my apartment the following night with tacos and a talking appoint face. "We need to talk," she said. Agreed. She sat, didn't touch the tacos. "People are saying you're going nuclear." "I'm doing my job," I said, hearing the repetition and not caring. "And I'm doing it in channels, which is more than I can say for you." Her eyes flashed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "You and Brandon," I said. "You think DM threads and late-night edits don't leave trails? You think nobody sees the two of you disappear at the Hyatt every time there's a pre-O brief?" "I have eyes, Maya." She went still, then laughed, a brittle, horrible sound. "You went through my phone." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Silence is a weirdly loud thing. You have no idea what pressure I'm under, she said, voice low. Do you think I wanted to babysit Brandon? He steamrolls. He promised exposure, and then that became everything else. And yes, it got messy. But this is my career, Dan. I don't get to be the noble engineer who says no and still gets promoted. I get to be the woman who is called difficult if I do your job for you. I didn't ask you to do my job, I said. I asked you to let me do mine. And then you made me the roadblock in your story about momentum. I didn't make you anything, she snapped. You did that yourself, with your doom decks and your righteous tone like you own the truth. Meanwhile, this deal could change everything for us. You, me, the company. Us? I said. There is no us's in a lie. Her face crumpled in a way I'd never seen. For a second, there was the person I fell for, tired, earnest, trying. Then she put the mask back on. You want to blow this up? Fine. But don't pretend you're some pure crusader. You like control. You always did. The worst part wasn't that she wasn't entirely wrong. The worst part was realizing she'd rather make me the villain than look at the man she'd chosen to align with. The audit committee meeting was 2 weeks later. They booked a windowless room and put out pitchers of water like that would dissolve the tension. I presented my risk register. QA presented incident reports from the field we hadn't incorporated. Legal asked a set of questions about materiality that made everyone sweat. Then they excused us and kept Brandon and Maya. That afternoon, Jonas sent an email canceling the key strategic update. Officially, further due diligence required. Unofficially, panic. Brandon swung by my desk at 6:13 p.m. when the floor was almost empty. Enjoy your win? He asked, voice flat. I enjoy us not lying to investors, I said. He smiled like a man thinking about a cliff. Do you know what I do with breaks, Dan? I burn them out. Careful, I said. You're starting to sound like a disclosure. The next day, the CFO looped me into a new thread with external auditors. Off to the side, my access was restored. Sam from People Analytics sent me another heat map comms pattern back to normal, DMs between B and M, down to a whisper. I didn't celebrate. The hard thing about exposing a rot is learning how far the smell carries. Maya moved out of my apartment the following weekend. She packed with quiet efficiency and left the key with Newton's vet appointment reminder on top. We stood in the doorway like actors who'd lost the plot. I'm sorry, she said finally. For what? I asked. For the deal? For him? For me? For not being who you thought I was? She swallowed. For not being who I thought I was. I nodded, because there was nothing left that words could rescue. At work, the fallout was gentler and meaner than I expected. Brandon wasn't fired. He was reassigned, which is corporate for, we're not sure how much you know. Maya was moved to a different program, far from partnerships. HR rolled out a relationship disclosure policy with teeth, and the audit committee instituted a rule. Any integration with a top 10 utility requires independent technical review, period. The email said culture, but it was really about liability. A month later, WestRock announced a partnership with our competitor. Their stock popped and then sagged when the first Texas heatwave hit and an inverter line tripped. I watched the news on a bar TV with captions on and the sound off, feeling exactly nothing beyond a tired kind of vindication. People asked me if I missed her. Of course I did. People are not projects. They don't close cleanly. My house got too quiet, my calendar too open. Newton climbed into the empty suitcase she used for work trips and slept there like he could hatch a better timeline. One evening in October, I drove out to the Pedernales Falls and watched the water fold over limestone like it had been practicing forever. Lily used to shoot this place at dusk. Maya liked it at noon. I sat somewhere in between, listening to cicadas and my own blood. I thought about revenge. Not the hot cinematic kind. The careful, lawful kind that looks like policy changes and canceled meetings and buried memos that never become press releases. It doesn't make good TV. It does keep bridges from collapsing. A week later, I got an email from legal, FYI SEC tip, acknowledged and closed. No further action. We had gotten ahead of it. We hadn't become the dent. Maya texted me once more, months later. I'm in Denver, she wrote. New job, different industry. I'm okay. I'm glad, I replied. It was true. I didn't wish her exile. I wished her a mirror. Brandon landed at a boutique consultancy that helps companies accelerate deals. Of course he did. Men like him don't fall. They glide horizontally until a new face recognizes the old tricks. As for me, I started running again. Not far, not fast, just enough to feel my body keep a promise. I also started volunteering on a consumer protection tech board that helps small municipalities read vendor contracts before they get bullied by acronyms. If revenge is getting your values back, then maybe I finally did. I still think about that janitor in the empty ballroom. People who say they're fine at 1 a.m. usually aren't. He was right. But you can get to fine, not the performative fine. The kind where you can sit alone on a porch at night and let the air touch your skin without wanting to sprint out of it. If you've been betrayed, here's what I learned. Document. Don't dramatize. Use channels. Don't go through phones. Yeah, I know. If the thing that's breaking your heart is also breaking the rules, you don't have to burn the building down. You can turn on the lights and let everyone see the wiring. And if you've ever been the person who chose momentum over truth, if you recognize yourself in the thin places of the story, find a mirror. Start there. What would you have done in my place? Be honest. Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if I went too far or not far enough. And if stories like this keep you thinking, hit like and subscribe so we keep the conversation going.